Welcome, learners. Welcome to Black Slides Online Secondary School. My name is Mr. Paul Chilola once again. So welcome to this revision session in which we are going to look at Biology Paper 1 from BSS, that's Blantyre Secondary School. Remember that Biology Paper 1 focuses mainly on factual knowledge, definitions, short explanations, as well as understanding of the basic biological concepts and facts. The paper tests your ability to recall facts correctly, use correct scientific terms, and apply simple concepts to familiar situations. So in this paper, the questions cover the majority of the objectives in your syllabus. Since this paper requires precision, we'll simply practice writing answers that are short, direct, and exactly what the examiners look for. So no extra stories. You don't get any extra marks for telling extra stories which don't make sense. So just focus on correct points and proper biological language or terms. So let's begin our journey together. If you are watching this video on our YouTube channel, consider subscribing. Consider subscribing to the channel so that every time we upload a new material, you become the first to know. Welcome once again. Welcome to section A. We are told to answer the questions in this section. To answer all the questions in this section in the spaces provided. So there are spaces where candidates were to write their answers on. And that's the nature of your paper in CAM MSc exams. Right? So figure 1 is a diagram of a nutrient cycle in nature. Use it to answer the questions that follow. So we have a diagram here. Let's look at the diagram together. I'm sure you can see clearly that this is what is called the nitrogen cycle. It shows how nitrogen moves. It shows how nitrogen moves from air into living things such as plants and animals, as well as into the soil and back to the air again. So at the very top, we have nitrogen gas. And recall that nitrogen gas makes almost 78% of our atmosphere. But plants and animals cannot use it in this form, in its purest form. It needs to be changed first. So nitrogen in the air becomes protein, plant protein. And the process by which that happens is denoted by the letter K. K is a process called nitrogen fixation. Nitrogen fixation, which is a process that is carried out by a special bacteria which lives in the soil or in the roots of such certain plants like beans, groundnuts, and others. So these plants, which are called leguminous plants, or legumes in short, take the gas, the nitrogen gas, from the air and turn it directly into nitrogen compounds, which plants can absorb, but it can also be fixed. The nitrogen gas can also get into the soil by the action of lightning during storms. The lightning, the energy from the lightning breaks down the nitrogen gas molecules, enabling it to dissolve and enter the living world, which is the plants. So once inside the plants, it builds into proteins. So once the nitrogen gets into the plants in form of a plant protein, a process P will take place. This is called feeding. So animals will eat plants, and the plant protein becomes animal protein. And that's how nitrogen moves up in the food chain. So when the plants shed off leaves, they die, and when the animals produce waste, they all die. The process F is going to take place. F is called ammonification. So bacteria and fungi are decomposers. They'll decompose the plant material as well as the animal material to form ammonium compounds. So this, as a result, will release nitrogen back into the soil, but still it is not in the best form for plants yet. That's why another process, which is represented in the diagram by the letter Z, will convert the ammonium compounds to nitrates. So this process is called nitrification. Process Z is nitrification. Other special types of bacteria also take up ammonium compounds and change it into what are called nitrites in the form that plants love to absorb. So plants will absorb those nitrites and make protein again. The process goes on and on. The nitrates are converted all the way back to nitrogen gas. So process E is called denitrification. So when the soil is waterlogged or without air, certain bacteria take up the nitrates and convert them back into nitrogen gas, releasing it into the atmosphere again. So the process balances the cycle, making sure that nitrogen does not build up forever in the soil. So in short, we are saying the process K represents nitrogen fixation, which is done by the action of certain kinds of bacteria and lightning. Process P is feeding, which is also called assimilation, whereby the plant protein becomes part of the animal protein. The process F is ammonification, where protein from both animal and plant and animals is acted upon. The materials, the dead plant and animal materials, are acted upon by bacteria and fungi to form ammonium compounds. And then the ammonium compounds are converted back into nitrates, which the plants absorb. Welcome, learners. So we are asked to use the diagram to name the process represented by letters F and Z. So process F, which is carried out by bacteria and fungus as decomposers, is what is called ammonification. You can also say decomposition. Welcome, learners. While process Z is a process called nitrification, whereby the ammonium compounds are converted into nitrates. So nitrates are the form of nitrogen which plants can absorb. Explain how the process at K takes place. We mentioned that K is nitrogen fixation. This can happen in two ways. It can be done by some special kinds of bacteria, which is found in the soil and is also found in certain plants such as beans and groundnuts. But it can also be done by the action of lightning during a rainstorm, where the energy from lightning breaks down nitrogen gas into a form that can be available to plants. Because here we have not shown the whole process. So what is K? So once again, K is nitrogen fixation, which takes place when nitrogen gas from the air is converted into nitrogen compounds which plants can absorb. So this is mainly done by nitrogen fixing bacteria, which is found in the soil or in what are called root nodules of leguminous plants like groundnuts, beans, and others. But lightning can also help to convert nitrogen into nitrates. So this is 3 marks. So first mark is for you to identify the process K is nitrogen fixation and to say what happens to the atmospheric nitrogen. That's another mark, which can be done by certain bacteria, nitrogen fixing bacteria, and the lightning. So all these will give you 3 marks. Welcome, learners. Question number 2. Question number 2 refers to a diagram is a diagram of a process that occurs in human alimental canal, or what is popularly known as the digestive system. We are asked to use it to answer the questions that follow. So let's look at this diagram carefully. First of all, it shows that what happens to fat molecule, which is also called lipid, in our digestive system. So we see a very big lipid molecule. These are molecules that are big greasy molecules. They are fats, as you know them. They're big molecules. And because they are large and they clumped together, enzymes cannot act on such big molecules. And they don't easily mix with water, so they stay big drops, as big drops. Now, if you look at process marked Y, process marked Y is important in the digestive process. So one large lipid molecule has to be broken down into smaller lipid molecules. So one molecule becomes 4. Of course, it can be any number of smaller molecules represented by these circles. These are smaller fat molecules. Right, so it shows process Y breaks down the large lipid molecule or fat molecule into smaller ones. For this to happen, the large molecule needs to be acted upon by a substance which is labeled Y. So the question is, name the process, rather name the substance labeled Y. So the substance that has to mix with large fat molecules to break them into smaller ones is supposed to be bile. So this substance is bile. Bile is made in the liver and is stored in the gallbladder. Take note that bile does not contain enzymes. It's not an enzyme. So it does not chemically break the large fat molecules. So this is not a chemical reaction. It's not a chemical process. So instead of reacting with it chemically, it simply acts as a detergent or a soap because of its basic nature. It's a base, it's alkaline. So it acts as a detergent or like a soap, liquid soap. So when bile, Y, mixes with large fat molecules, it breaks them up mechanically, physically, into thousands of tiny little droplets, as shown here. This is a process called emulsification. So by turning one big drop into many small droplets, this will increase the surface area, so that now fat digesting enzymes, which in most cases is lipase, would have a massive surface area to break them down further and faster into what are called fatty acids and the glycerol. So finally, those small droplets are acted upon by enzymes, and you see them shown here like small pieces representing the final products, or representing the end products of very fine particles. So in short, we are saying large molecule is acted upon by bio, breaking it into smaller particles, which the process called emulsification. Must also take note that this process happens in a part of the digestive system called the duodenum. So 1 mark for saying bile, but you can also say bile juice. Once again, let me mention that bile is produced by the liver, but is stored in what is called the gallbladder. Stored in the gallbladder. And also take note that bile itself is not an enzyme. It behaves like a soap. It's basic. You see, an alkaline substance, which simply breaks down the large molecules into small molecules for easy action of an enzyme called lipase. Remember, it's lipase that converts fats or lipids into fatty acids and the glycerol. Take note, I thought I should take more time to explain that, although the question is just 1 mark. Name the organ that produces substance labeled Y. So, like we mentioned, substance Y is bile. So, bile is produced in a structure called the liver. So, one of the functions of the liver is to produce bile, which is used for emulsifying fats. Explain how substance Y carries out the process mentioned or shown in the figure. So we said that this process, the process by which the large fat molecules are broken down into smaller ones, is emulsification. So how does bile do that? So substance Y, which is bile, as we mentioned, carries out the process by breaking down large lipids into small lipids. This process is called emulsification. When the large fat molecules are broken down, it will lead to an increase in surface area. Of fats. For lipase enzymes to act efficiently, remember, once again, bile itself is not an enzyme. It's just an emulsifier, or a substance that breaks down large fat molecules into smaller ones. So 2 marks. Substance Y, which is bile, carries out the process by breaking down large lipid molecules into small lipid droplets, 1 mark. To increase the surface area of fats, for lipase enzymes to act on it more efficiently. 2 marks. Welcome learners, this is Black Slides Online Secondary School. Consider subscribing to the channel so that every time we upload a new video lesson, you are notified on time. Welcome to question number 3. Figure 3 shows a cross-section of blood vessels in the human blood circulatory system. Use it to answer the questions that follow. So let's look at the diagram closely. So the diagram is showing us the cross sections of the 2 main types of blood vessels in our body, labeled X and Y. Take note that both of them have the same basic 3 layers. The outer layer, which is called the fibrous outer layer, the middle one, the middle muscular elastic layer, which is called the membranous inner layer, also known as endothelium. So let's start with Y. You can see that it is more muscular, much thicker, and is strong and more muscular than X. In other words, this is more muscular, has more muscle than X. And also the middle, which is very thick, the middle layer is very thick, this one here. And the space inside, which is called the lumen, this one is narrower and smaller. So these features are indicative of a blood vessel called the artery. So this must be an artery. So the arteries are thick in order to withstand the high blood pressure as blood is flowing through it. So the thick walls prevent it from bursting due to high blood pressure. Now, let's look at y, I mean x. So x, unlike y, is much thinner and less muscular. And the inside lumen is very wide compared to that of y. So this fits perfectly into the characteristics of what is called a vein. Remember that arteries carry blood away from the heart to the rest of the body, of course, except the pulmonary artery. And also remember that veins veins carry blood back to the heart, except the pulmonary vein. So, name the blood vessel labeled Y. This must be an artery. Explain a reason for your answer to A. The reason is because it has thick muscular and elastic wall with a narrow lumen to withstand high blood pressure. So it has a thick muscular and elastic wall, one mark, and a narrow lumen. So these fit into the description of an artery. The last part, explain how the flow of blood is brought about in blood vessels labeled X. In other words, how is blood flow brought about in the vein? So blood flow in X is brought about by skeletal muscle contraction and the action of veins, what are called valves. All right? So the role of skeletal muscle contraction is seen when you move your arms, legs, or body muscles, the muscles contract and relax against the veins. So in the process, the contraction of the muscles will squeeze or has a squeezing effect or action, which compresses the veins and pushes blood along towards the heart. Just like you do when you're squeezing toothpaste. When you squeeze toothpaste tube from the bottom up, that's essentially what happens when your skeletal muscles in the arm, in the leg, and in the body contract and relax. They push blood. So by saying that, you have one mark. Veins are rich in what are called semilunar valves, which are spaced at intervals along their length. So valves open only towards the heart. When the muscle squeeze, blood moves up forward and opens the valves in front of them. When muscles relax and blood tries to flip back, the valve closes tightly, preventing backflow of blood, especially against gravity. So this ensures that blood flows only in one way, towards the heart. Welcome, learners. This is Black Slides Online Secondary School. Remember, we are revising a biology paper 1 from one of the big institutions, government schools, called Blantyre Secondary School. Subscribe to the channel so that every time we upload a new work, you become the first one to know. Part C, figure 4 shows a type of pollution. We are asked to use it to answer the questions that follow. First, let's look at the diagram. First of all, we see a thick and dark shiny layer covering the water surface. This clearly shows that there's an oil spill or something into the river. So what type of pollution is this? So clearly you can see this must be water pollution. It can be due to an oil spill, a pipe bursting in the water, and a pipe bursting and pouring its contents into the water there. It will lead to water pollution. Explain how the type of pollution mentioned here affects life in the aquatic habitat. Aquatic habitat is a water habitat. So first of all, you need to know that when oil is spilled on water, it will prevent oxygen from entering the water. So it is going to reduce oxygen in the water, and that can kill aquatic organisms such as fish. But it can also form what is called a thick blanket, meaning that it can block sunlight from the sun, such that sunlight cannot shine through a ridge, cannot shine through to reach the plants which are growing below the water. So without adequate light, the plants in the water cannot photosynthesize, and therefore they will die. This, in the end, removes oxygen from reaching the aquatic animals. But also the oil spill would reduce the solubility of oxygen, making it unavailable. Unavailable to the plants. But also the oil can block fish gills, preventing fish from breathing properly. And eventually they will die. So we are saying the oil blocks sunlight, preventing the light from reaching plants so that they don't photosynthesize, thereby making the amount of oxygen less. The oil prevents oxygen dissolving into the water. In the process, it's going to suffocate plants and the animals living in it. The oil will coat the gills and that will prevent fish from breathing, and eventually they will die. Part 3. Explain why 1. Explain any one impact of climate change in Malawi. Climate change causes prolonged droughts, leading to food shortage. Climate change can also increase flooding. Heavy sudden rains destroy farms, homes, and spread diseases such as cholera. So you can just select any 2 or 1. Here we've looked at what it would cause, the impact, and how it affects Malawi. Welcome, Leonard. Sorry for that. So table 1 shows results of an experiment by students on a plant growing in a pond. So we have an environment, a pond environment, in which plants are growing. So use the table to answer the questions that follow. Let's examine the table together. We have name of ion, sodium, potassium, calcium, chlorine or chloride. And each ion has a concentration. So sodium, the concentration of sodium is 60, whatever 60 is, could be milligrams or grams, whatever it is. And the cell sap has less sodium. In other words, the concentration of sodium in the pond water is greater than in the cell. Potassium, the concentration is 4, there's less potassium in the pond than in the cell. There's more calcium in the water than in the cell. And then lastly, the chlorides, there are less chlorides, that's 200, than in the cell where there is 250 of them. So using that information, name the process by which the following ions could have been taken up by this plant. Process by which each ion is absorbed. Sodium ions. First, we need to consider the concentrations. There is more sodium in the water than in the plant. That means the sodium was moving from high concentration region to low concentration region. Therefore, this must be diffusion. Remember, diffusion is the movement of particles from their region of high concentration to the region of low concentration. Potassium ions, let's consider their concentration also. There is less concentration, there's lower concentration of potassium ions in the pond water than in this plant. So this must be active transport. Remember that in active transport, molecules or particles move from their region of low concentration to the region of high concentration against a concentration gradient. Explain any one condition necessary for each of the processes mentioned above. For diffusion to occur, there must be a concentration gradient, meaning that ions should move from their higher concentration, which in this case in the pond, to lower concentration, in this case the cell sap. Welcome learners. For active transport to occur, there's need for energy in the form of adenosine triphosphate, ATP. So it requires energy from respiration in the form of ATP to move ions against the concentration gradient. ATP here acts as a pump to pump particles from their region of low concentration to the region of higher concentration. This process without energy cannot take place. Welcome learners. Figure 5 shows a dissected bony fish, could be utaka, jumbo, or anything, to expose its zigzag muscles. These are zigzag muscles. Use it to answer the questions that follow. So these zigzag muscles have a name. We are asked to name the muscles labeled M. So the muscles labeled M are called myotomes. They are zigzag muscles. Of course, don't say zigzag muscles because we are told already that these are zigzag muscles. So the zigzag muscles have a name. So these are the segmented muscles of fish that enable it to move or swim. So the name itself is one mark. Welcome learners. My name is Mr. Paul Chilola once again. This is Black Slides Online Secondary School. Consider subscribing to the channel and also hit the notification bell. That's going to help you each time we upload a new video lesson. You get a notification. Welcome learners. Explain how the muscles named in 1A, named in the figure above, bring about swimming in fish. How do myotops help fish to swim? In 3 marks, requiring us to mention 3 points. So the myotoms, which are the zigzag muscles, contract alternately or one after another on either side of the body of the fish. Remember, the fish has two body sides, the left side and the right hand side, the right side. So these muscles contract one after another alternately on either side of the body. By saying this, 1 mark. So this alternate contraction produces lateral undulations. So you're saying the alternate contraction of muscles produces lateral undulations. Undulations is like wave-like motions or movements. So these wave-like motions or movements push against water and propels the fish forward. 3 marks, 1 mark for each point. Explain any one way in which fish is adapted for swimming. All right, so how are fish adapted for swimming? Fish have a streamlined shape. The use of the streamlined shape of the fish helps it to cut drag or drag force, to reduce drag force, which is resistance to water flow, and allows the fish to move smoothly through water. So we are saying adaptation is streamlined body shape, which reduces resistance to allow smooth movement through water. Fish have fins such as caudal fins or tail fins to help them to move forward, propulsion. They have fins which are called dorsal fins or anal fins to prevent them from rolling. They have fins called pectoral fins to help them steering and braking, slowing down. and pelvic fins, which help them to gain stability. They also have what is called a swim bladder. A swim bladder is simply a gas-filled sac that controls floating. So fish adjust the gas in the swim bladder to float at different depths without sinking or without wasting energy. Fish also have scales which overlap like tiles. In order to reduce friction even more. So these and many others are the adaptations of the fish to move in water or to swim. Here I only represented one. But make sure that each of the adaptations mentioned has two parts so that you gain 2 marks. So one adaptation of swimming for swimming is the streamlined shape. This is the most common one to reduce resistance. So by saying it has streamlined body shape, 1 mark. To reduce resistance, another mark. Or to reduce drag, the force due to water resisting the motion of the fish. It's called resistance or drag. Question number 8. A student was studying breeding of fish in ponds. She observed that in a certain pond, where there was algae bloom, fish were dying at night and could not die during daytime. Explain any one cause of the algae bloom. So algae bloom is basically caused by excess nutrients and too much nutrients from fertilizers or organic waste in the pond. So it will cause algae to grow a lot, a condition known as algae bloom. Explain why fish die only at night and not during the day. This is because fish die at night because algae stop photosynthesizing at night when there's no light, but continue respiring consuming all the oxygen present. So as a result, they die. Welcome, learners, to Black Slides Online Secondary School. So effectively, this will reduce dissolved oxygen levels in the water, leading to suffocation of fish, and they die. So during the day, photosynthesis produces oxygen to enable the fish to survive. Welcome, learners. Question number 9. The wings of birds and those of insects are both used for flying, and have flat, broad surfaces but their internal structures are different. What term is given to these structures? These structures are called analogous structures. Analogous structures are when structures of different organisms have related structures and related functions. So those of wings of birds and those of insects are used for flight, and they have flat, broad surfaces, so they are similar. So we call these analogous structures. Mention one type of evolution shown by structures mentioned here. The type of evolution is called convergent evolution. Convergent evolution. Welcome, learners. This is Black Slides Online Secondary School. Table below shows the number of melanic and light-colored moths in two different environments where birds were predators. Use it to answer the questions that follow. I must say that this paper is very rich in very useful questions. All right, so we have two types of moths. We have light-colored moths and the melanic moths. So those living in the natural environment, the light-colored moths have in the natural environment are 187, while in the polluted environment they are 62. The melanic moths are 72 in the natural environment and 2,000 in the polluted environment. State one difference between the two types of moths in the two environments. Just have to look at the numbers. So the examiners expect you to say that in the natural environment, light-colored moths are more numerous than melanic moths. There are 187 here and only 72 here. While in the polluted environment, here, melanic moths are more numerous than light-colored moths. They are more here than there. Describe how natural selection operated in a polluted environment. Take note that in the polluted environment, there are more melanic moths than light-colored moths. All right, so polluted darkened tree barks. Pollution darkened tree barks in the polluted environment, making melanic moths less visible to predators. In other words, the melanic moths mimicked the color of the tree barks to look like them. In the process, they were hidden from their predators. So light-colored moths were easily spotted and eaten by birds, thereby reducing their numbers. So melanic moths survived and reproduced more successfully, passing on the dark coloration traits. In the end, over time, the population shifted to predominantly melanic moths. Welcome, learners. My name is Mr. Pochilula, your teacher. Question number 10, we are getting towards the end. An ecologist, while studying ecology, observed the following animals in a certain ecosystem: grasshoppers, scorpions, houseflies, millipedes, and centipedes. To which group of animals do the observed animals belong? Grasshoppers, scorpions, houseflies, millipedes, and centipedes belong to a group of animals called arthropods. These are arthropods. Right, so these belong to a family of organisms called arthropods. Usually, arthropods have hard outer shell which is made up of a material called chitin, protecting their bodies. They also have segmented body parts, such as most of them have a head, they have a thorax and abdomen, they have jointed ribs, and they have a bilateral symmetry. So the ecologists further grouped the organisms into one phylum. Into one phylum, which is called Arthropoda. Remember, a phylum is simply a major group or rank which is used in biological classification. It is a large category that contains all animals or plants which share the same important body features, phylum. Or put simply, a phylum is just the second largest level of grouping organisms. So we have phylum Chordata, we have phylum Arthropoda, and phylum Angiospermatophyta, which includes all flowering plants. And like that, this is just classification, large group of organisms. List 3 observable characteristics that make the ecologist to place them in the Arthropoda phylum. So the Arthropoda phylum consists of all animals with jointed legs and the exoskeletons, such as insects, spiders, crabs, and the others. So list any 3 observable characteristics among these. So we are saying they have jointed appendages. Appendages are like legs. They have exoskeleton made of chitin. And they have segmented bodies. 3 of them, 3 marks. Mention any 2 observable features that place scorpion and centipedes in different classes. So scorpions and centipedes don't belong to the same class for some reason, simply because the scorpion has 4 pairs of legs, walking legs. Because of that, it belongs to its own group called Arachnida. Centipedes, on the other hand, have many pairs of legs belonging to Chilopoda. Scorpion has 2 body regions, which classifies it as a cephalothorax and abdomen. Centipede, on the other hand, has long segmented body with 1 pair of legs per segment. So much doing for this question. This is Form 3 topic called living organisms. Figure 7 is a diagram showing the process occurring in the human body. Use it to answer questions that follow. Identify the process shown. By the way, this is showing charges, different charges, positive on the outer part and negatives inside, negative charges or ions. You can look at these as ions. Identify the process in the figure. All right, so let's see what's going on. Figure A is showing us a situation where we have positive ions on the outer part of, this could be a nerve or something. So we have different potentials. We have positive potential outside and negative potential inside. Here, the outer part is partly negative and the inside part is partly positive. Identify the process. So the process is called nerve impulse transmission. What's happening here is we have nerve impulse transmission is showing a nerve when it is transmitting an impulse, a signal, which is called action potential. Mention special cells responsible for the process above. So the cells that are responsible for this process are simply the neurons, which are called the nerve cells. Name the part of process labeled M. So this part of process labeled M is called the node of Ranvier. Node of Ranvier. Node of Ranvier. All right. State the mineral element used in the body to allow for the process M. In other words, the mineral responsible for nerve impulse or action potential is sodium ions. Sodium ions are needed to transmit signals in the nerves. Which of the 2 diagrams A and B is polarized? So the one that is polarized is the A. What that means is that the outer part is positively charged, the inner part is negatively charged. It has negative ions. So that makes it a polarized nerve, a polarized neuron, polarization. Welcome. We are now in section C, or rather section B. Answer all questions in this section in essay form. Describe any 5 mineral elements in a plant growth and photosynthesis. For plants to grow and to carry out photosynthesis, some minerals are needed. So the question is requiring us to mention any 5 and how they help with plant growth and photosynthesis. Nitrogen is one of them. By just saying one nitrogen, that's 1 mark. This is needed for synthesis of chlorophyll. Remember, chlorophyll is needed for photosynthesis. It is also nitrogen that builds up proteins and the nucleic acids. So 2 marks for that. Phosphorus is essential for ATP formation. This is adenosine triphosphate, the form in which plants make energy. And the energy transferred during photosynthesis. 2 marks again, that makes it 4. Another one is magnesium, which is the central atom in chlorophyll, which is vital for capturing light energy. And then we have potassium. Potassium regulates stomato opening and enzyme activation in photosynthesis. And lastly, iron, which is important in the electron transport chain of photosynthesis. All right, so these are the 5 minerals and their functions in growth and photosynthesis. Question 12. Describe any 5 modes of transmission of infectious diseases. Infectious diseases are those diseases that can be passed from person to person. All right. So one can contract diseases by direct contact, for example, touching, kissing, or sexual contact with an infected person. Make sure for each disease you give examples. Some diseases are transmitted by air. We call them airborne diseases, which can be transmitted by inhaling droplets or particles which carry pathogens. For example, through coughing and sneezing. Welcome, learners. Some diseases are transmitted by water. We call them waterborne diseases. For example, drinking contaminated water can lead to contraction of diseases. Some diseases are contracted through eating food which is contaminated. So eating contaminated food would also lead to contraction of diseases. And lastly, there are some diseases that are transmitted by animals such as mosquitoes, flies, or ticks. Welcome to the last question. Explain any 5 effects of chromosomal mutation. This is the change in the structure and arrangement of chromosomes in the cells. So it has some effects. And the examiner is asking us to explain. One of them is the change in chromosome number. It can lead to conditions such as Down syndrome, whereby instead of having the normal 23 chromosomes, one has 21 chromosomes. Can also lead to structure changes such as deletion, duplications, removing chromosomes, some chromosomes, or multiplying to repeating copies of chromosomes or inversions can disrupt gene function. Another one is reduced fertility. Abnormal chromosome pairing during meiosis can cause sterility, where one may not reproduce. Another one is developmental abnormalities. Mutations may result in malfunctioning or impaired growth. So instead of growing normally, you find that one is either becoming too big or too small, as in giantism and dwarfism. And lastly, genetic disorders can cause diseases due to altered gene expression or loss of essential genes. So make sure you know all of them so that you can either answer them in essay format or you can just explain them in section A, where you are required to mention any two, explain any two. Welcome, learners. My name once again is Mr. Pochilola, your teacher. It has been wonderful to share with you this. I believe you also have something to share with me. Don't hesitate. Where you feel that I left out something very important, don't hesitate to say so. As a teacher, I believe in continued learning. Welcome, learners. Let me leave you now for now. Bye-bye for now.